Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, I have been asked to watch this video quite a bit. It's about the predatory gacha game monetization tactics tier list from bad to worst. Damn, that is a mouthful. And it is by none other than Saeki himself. And so if you do have a history of the channel, we had a bit of a, I don't know if you would necessarily call it beef, but I did a pretty harsh review on, well, his review of the Wuthering Waves story specifically. And I've reacted to Saeki before that incident, really liked his content when he was focused a lot on things like game mechanics and stuff like that. And it looks like that's exactly what he's going to be going through today. Without further ado, let's just go ahead, take a look, because this is quite a comprehensive list, and it's quite a beefy video. I'm just going to preemptively bump it up. I have been getting complaints that my YouTube videos are getting longer than some feature films. So why don't we just bump it up to 1.25, see how it sounds, and then go from there.
MiHoYo is not your friend.
It makes sense.
Pro Games is not your friend.
Also true.
Hypergriff is not your friend.
He's going to say this for like 30 other companies, isn't he?
Project Moon is not your friend. Gaming is a business. It has always been a business. Ever since the birth of arcades all the way to the rise of mobile gaming, companies have always used gaming as a medium for artistic expression, as well as profit. While there are, in my opinion, honorable ways to monetize a game, there are also some not so honorable ways.
I think a lot of people tend to forget that sometimes. The purpose of every single game is to create cash. Much like how a lot of people can love their jobs, they can love their careers, but the goal of their careers is to also make some money. And the bonus, or really like the real meat of this whole like making money dynamic, is whether or not these companies are making money while at the same time still delivering a quality product, right? And you can look past some of like, you know, that goal of making money as long as the product that you're getting in return is something that you feel is worth it. And these gacha games, right, through their monetization, through their marketing, all of that, they've managed to make these very expensive things feel like they're worth it. But a lot of them tend to go a little bit too far. And a lot of people are probably going to be surprised by what's in this list. I'm not going to pre-watch it because, or I haven't actually pre-watched it because a lot of people think that some of the top companies right now are like the devil. But they don't know that a lot of games actually have it way worse and do actually give you way worse products in return. And we'll be making sure to point them out.
Gacha games, and by extension mobile games, have had a decade of growth at this point, with some even rivaling the quality of what you'd see on a console platform. At the same time, the tactics in which these games employ to ultimately retain and monetize you as a user have also been tried and perfected. From reinforcing habit formation with daily logins, to proprietary currency obfuscating the cost of in-game items, to fear missing out elements creating artificial urgency. Today, I want to go over every single technique I found.
Those are all spot on, and I love the examples that he actually showed because I played a lot of those games, and some of them are just, they feel intentionally designed to confuse you.
Over the years I've played gacha games, how they psychologically affect you, and more importantly, how you can avoid them. I'm going to be coming up with a list of 3 tiers of what I believe to be the practices ranked from least to most predatory.
Okay.
I'll break down what these practices are and place them somewhere on the list. Hopefully, by the end of the video, you'll be able to understand exactly how gacha monetization works and how to better moderate yourself as a player. So let's begin. Before we can go over the predatory practices, I think it's worthwhile to explain what the gacha model is and what I think of it. Now, I personally enjoy playing gacha games. I think it absolutely still has the potential to create artistry and create a vibrant story and community around it. At its core, gacha games are able to build an ever-growing universe while having the player feeling involved in the plot as it unravels in real time. Alongside the extremely accessible nature of being played on your phone, the barrier of entry is low enough that the game can create a casual and inclusive atmosphere where pretty much everyone can get into.
I would say that what he's described is more so like a live service game rather than a gacha game specifically. That's how I take what he's given out, because he talked a lot about the whole, like, you know, playing alongside the story and then seeing it grow, but that's like a feature in, you know, any MMORPG, any live action game, or any live service game that gets its story updated.
I personally got into Fate Grand Order as one of my first gacha games, and its high quality story was something that kept me awake on the subway back when I—
Yeah, like think like Warframe, think World of Warcraft, think like Destiny, right? Those aren't gacha games, but they, you know, they all have that live service element that gets constantly updated.
was still commuting to a university.
And Concord. Just kidding.
This would be the best argument I can come up with where I believe the gacha model can be justified. However, reality is often not that simple. In a traditional video game, you pay the upfront fee of $60, then you get the entire game for you to do as you please. You might not get any updates for it, but the game includes the full experience, and the developer has no reason to place any player retention tactics and further ways to monetize.
I mean, what do you call Destiny then? Or like The Division 2? Or like any of those, or like what do you call those games then? Because you buy those for $60, right? You buy those for $60, and then Destiny 2 will like get constantly updated with like content and stuff. Sure, you gotta buy DLCs, but there's still stuff in the base game that goes there. So yeah, I think like that. Maybe the live service games are in like more of like the minority over here.
Aside from maybe paid DLCs down the line. When the business model revolves around gacha, the main goals of the developer changes. Because gacha games are expected to be free to download, there has to be some way to monetize and retain its users across an indefinite period of time. After all, I've talked about this before, but user retention is extremely important.
Wait, isn't this Destiny? Am I tripping? Wait, what the fuck? This is Destiny, isn't it? It's a free-to-play game? Okay, you know, I guess you're technically right. It used to be... This is Destiny Gacha? Oh! I didn't even know they had this shit. What the fuck?
Important for online businesses. They're often categorized as D1, D7, and D30 retention. This refers to Day 1, Day 7, and Day 30 respectively. According to this Harvard Business article, increasing customer retention rates by even 5% can increase profits by 25% to 95%. I believe there are acceptable ways to retain and monetize users in ways that are morally and ethnically corrupt.
I think one thing that people don't realize is that retention rate is the #1 metric when it comes to the sustainability of any game. So think about it this way, right? We're going to bring out paint over here because I really want to describe this well. Because I think a lot of people don't fully realize what's going on. So think about it this way. We got a chart, right? We got a chart over here. This one's going to be users, or this one's going to be time, right? That one's going to be time. This one is players. And so imagine, right, that you start out at, let's just say 100 players over here at the very start. And then you lose about 5% of your players every single month, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 whatever, right? You lose about 5% every month. You know, it's just going down, whatever, kind of like a curve like that. Imagine that at each of these points, we're just like higher because we increased our, and then the curve looks like that, right? Across all these points, we end up like higher, right? You end up with like a curve that goes like that. And then the comparison is being made over here. And then that is like the gap in customers that you will have as you have different retention rates. Simply of like only 5%. I realize what this chart is beginning to look like now, so just pretend that's not there. So yeah, the real focus that you guys should be having right over here is this gap over here that exists between or at the later time point, and that's all just from retention rates. And so if you expand that out even further, right, well, the gap should theoretically only get wider. So that is why retention rates are so damn important.
However, what you define as predatory is ultimately subjective. There are things I don't think are predatory, and some that I find extremely so. This will be reflected in the tier list, so let's break it down. The first category will be called mild. These are the practices I think can still be argued as predatory, but I ultimately don't really have a problem if some of them are in the game.
That's fair. Okay, I like that definition.
Which I'll explain why when I get to it. The second tier is what I call the risky category. These are the tactics that were implemented on the conscious decision from the developers that didn't need to be there, and
okay, I like that definition too.
Are the very definition of what I think is predatory. Last, there are 2 items in the deep end tier. These are what I think to be the worst of the worst, and things that I actively campaign against in my reviews that should be minimized as much as possible.
These are the big red flags. It's red for a reason. Okay.
And ones that actively hurt my enjoyment of a game. They're quite broad subjects, so I guess you just have to wait and see. This is how I would subjectively categorize predatory practices in gacha games, so let's dive into the list. We'll start off with the mild tier, with something that's pretty harmless if you ask me. Login bonuses and daily missions. These are usually menial tasks that you can knock out in like 5 minutes or less. It's a light way to incentivize regular logins to a game. By themselves, I don't really have a problem with these. There are cases where the best rewards are locked behind the final days of a login streak, and I think there's absolutely something that...
Wait, what the fuck was this? I had never seen this shit before! Oh, it's a returnee event. Okay. I was about to say, like, wait, why did bro get access to an exclusive Wuthering Waves event? What the fuck is this? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I guess that shows you that I'm a real player of this game. Yeah, I've never seen this page before. Yeah. If anything, yeah. Showing this just means you're not a true gacha player.
Where the best rewards are locked behind the final days of a login streak, and I think there's absolutely something that can be said about that. Overall, login bonuses are pretty tame. The stamina system is yet
I have no problems at all with login bonuses. I think my point of view is that a login bonus only becomes a problem if your daily gameplay loop is, like, legitimately too significantly long to, like, deal with it in a good manner. One example of a login bonus that was terrible was Zenless Zone Zero's Hollow Zero at release. You had to do like 10 runs of that shit a week. It was insane the amount of Hollow Zero runs you had to do in ZZZ 1.0 to meet like the weekly requirement for it. You were spending like 2 to 3 hours in the roguelike. Awful. And it took them way too long to fix it. I think it was in the middle of version 1.1, or it was like in the middle of 1.2.
Another player retention method that's pretty much baked into every gacha game. There are many ways to implement this. Some games might max out your stamina reserve in less than 24 hours to encourage 2 logins in a single day.
I think if you're on a 2 login system, it's too much. I think stamina is okay as long as it feels like it's on like a 24-hour cycle. That's why I don't like Genshin's, because it's on like the most stupid cycle ever. You regenerate like 8.6 an hour. Who decided that? You idiot. Right? It's like weird ones like that where you're like not like, it's like fucking with like your internal clock, just like looking at the number. I don't really like that shit. Right? And so when you have a system like Wuwa where it's like 240 in 24 hours, 10 per hour, same in HSR, same in ZZZ, I'm cool with it, right? It just feels like another sort of like clock. It feels like the dailies for me. But Genshin's one? Fuck that, right? And other games like PGR where you have like, again, it regenerates at like a weird pace. I just don't like those. Just make it easy to understand. Keep it simple. HSR is 300. HSR's cap is 300. But it regenerates 10 every hour like Wuthering Waves and like ZZZ.
And some that don't. Regardless of how it's done, the stamina system represents a major source of progression for your account. The daily missions and spending stamina usually are the two biggest.
Rest in peace, this fucking game. This game would have survived if the PC client wasn't a piece of dog shit, because I would actually play it. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to bind my dodge button to right click. The game launched, I couldn't bind to traditional I wasn't able to bind my left click to attack and my right click to dodge, which you do in every ARPG. Every ARPG is designed with dodge on right click and attack on left, and you couldn't do it in Black Beacon.
Sources to level up your account. They give a ton of player XP relative to all other repeatable activities in the game. This is, of course, habit formation at its finest. You want to progress fast in a gacha game? Simply do your dailies and spend stamina. You can exchange stamina for in-game materials, but obviously at a controlled rate.
I think a big part of the stamina system that I feel like is a little bit understated is it does give you like a target to do something, right? A part of like the satisfaction, right, of a game is feeling like you've been efficient with your resources, right? That you've done everything that you needed to for the day. Sometimes having a task for you to complete is like a little bit of like a dopamine hit, right? Because it's like, oh, you go in, you did what you needed to do, you progressed your account, you've improved your resources or your strength of a character in a certain way. Give yourself a bit of a pat on the back, right? It's constant progression, which, you know, that's better than feeling static and feeling like you're not going anywhere, right?
Wouldn't it be much more player-friendly to just erase the system and let players farm something for as much as they want? Yes.
It would, but this is the other thing. Who's still playing Elden Ring? Who's still playing Grand Blue Fantasy Relink? Obviously, those games are ones that haven't received updates in a while, but those are also games that you binge and then put down for a very long time. Imagine that there is like a glass of milk. One is the Elden Ring milk, the other is the Wuthering Waves milk. You literally have like a filter on top of your Wuthering Waves cup that prevents you from drinking the entire thing immediately. But with Elden Ring, You can just drink the entire thing immediately, and then, well, guess what? You just might not want milk for a while because it was a really big fucking glass. And so maybe you'll come back for milk later, but it's not the same as a gacha where you're just getting like a little bit of milk with every single sip, and so the cup lasts a lot longer from that degree. And that's the thing, right? Gacha companies experience a lot more overall success, even if you're just a free-to-play player that's still drinking the milk. Because that helps with like retention numbers, that helps with like metrics, all of that stuff. And so even a free-to-play player logging in, playing every single day, never actually spending money on the game, still is a positive impact on the game as a whole. And that's what they want, even if you're not spending any cash.
Yes, I would. When there's a stamina system, you don't get to play at your own pace. You get to play at the pace in which the developers let you. I personally don't have a problem with Battle Passes and its premium paid track. Battle Passes have been normalized in a lot of games across many genres. I'm okay with paid players having accelerated progression through additional activities.
I don't see a problem with the Battle Pass either. I consider this to be the monthly subscription fee of the game. Or really, not really like the monthly, but like the version subscription fee. It's basically like being a member in RuneScape. Yeah, you'll get all your other shit faster, right? But I mean, it's not really that comparable because members, like, you literally get more features. But it's like a premium sort of version of the game, right? You'll be able to do everything faster. You'll be able to do everything more easily. Do all of that, right? But even if you're like a giga free-to-play that never buys the Battle Pass, you will still pretty much be able to eventually progress to the same level as people that do. $20 per month? No, it's $10 every 42 days. That's how much Battle Passes typically cost. $10 every 42 days. I'm gonna be real with you. If you cannot afford that, you've got bigger problems than anything that's in a gacha game. $10 in 42 days. If you cannot afford that, you've got bigger issues in your life than monetization in a gacha. I'm going to be honest. That is like, the people on the street are more well off than you at that point, if $10 every 42 days is a problem.
In terms of additional purchases, it's in my opinion one of the least insidious ways to monetize and retain users. Alongside daily logins, I mostly don't have a problem with these tactics by themselves. There's a very big caveat I'll mention later, but you'll just have to wait and see. You may have noticed that some in-game events have a weird time gate on what portions of the event are unlocked, usually releasing a few levels every few days. What about why is there a weekly cap on how many times you can farm a boss drop? Wouldn't it be better if that cap wasn't there? You'd be absolutely correct. All of the mentioned tactics so far aren't necessarily for monetizing you, but rather for player retention. It's vitally important for an always online game to have a steady player base.
And that's kind of like the part that frustrates me, especially when it comes to events. I hate when events are like time gated off in a way that makes it feel like it's making the event worse. But there can also be like good time gating where digesting all of the event at once would make it like way too long of an experience. And then, you know, being able to take it piece by piece actually improves it as a whole. There are very few examples of where it improves it, though, and more so a lot of examples of where it's made worse. So I'm not going to take the outlier as, like, you know, the means over here.
Even if you're free to play, you're still a valuable asset to the company. You may contribute to the community,
just like what I said before,
in some way and spread the word to newcomers. Besides, as long as you remain a player, there's always the opportunity that you'll decide to spend money in the future. The reason I don't really have a problem with the tactics mentioned so far is that it's understandable some of them are in place in order to retain players. Here's my challenge to you. For tomorrow, just don't log in to any of the gacha games you play. That's it. It's kind of like skipping class. Once you do it once, then you realize that you can just keep doing it.
There are a lot of games where the login was sort of like the main thing that keeps you going, right? However, there's also a lot of games where you do end up skipping that day and then you're kind of just like, yeah, I think I'm good. And that just basically means that you've kind of just lost interest in the game. And it's a good time to quit. If you're at the point where the login reward was the only reason why you were going, you skip it one day and then you no longer feel a desire to log in anymore, just quit the game. That's my take. Just quit the game at that point. Maybe come back to it at a later point when there's like a new update, but you're essentially actually just like on the hook. You are like just a fish in that situation. You have been caught and you need to release yourself.
When you wake up in the morning, sit at your phone or computer, and realize that you can do whatever you want without needing to bother with dailies or login bonuses, it'll feel like a weight that has been lifted from your shoulder. Power creep and feature creep. These specifically refer to newer release characters having better stats and complex kits. Balancing this factor is quite difficult. As a gacha game, it needs to release new characters to entice new and existing players to stick around, and the game must find some way to market or innovate on the game's existing mechanics.
I think that power creep and feature creep are okay to a degree, as long as you're making sure that it's not egregious and there's still like a path forward for older units on the roster to also get their time in the sun as well. I'll actually use Hoyoverse's examples for good and bad power creep. Good power creep is Genshin Impact releasing Farina. She was, on her release, probably the best overall damage buffer in the game. But with her release, she brought up the power levels of some of the weakest members of the roster to a much higher degree. And so, she was one of the strongest, potentially the strongest character in the game, but she made so many other units also stronger at the same time. That was good power creep. That was good feature creep. She improved the game as a whole, opened up so many more types of teams, blah, blah, blah. Now we'll use Genshin Impact and an example of bad power creep. Mabuika and Sitlali, where when you pair that duo together, they deal 50% more damage than every other team in the game. And so, you look at that increase in damage, you already looked at how stacked you had best in slot teams, like your Kazuha, your Yelan, all of that, doing like 60k. Mabuika Sitlali comes in and does 90. And so you begin to look at that and you're like, there's literally no way for any of these older units to ever reach those numbers. There's no way. This wasn't like a gradual, right? Oh, it'll just be like 10k here. We're gonna go from 60 to 70. It wasn't gradual. It was immediate 50 to 100% spike in DPS in one update from the release of 2 characters. And when people saw that, all hope was lost that there was going to be any viability of the old units. And that is what I call devastating, disgusting, awful power creep. And it's crazy that one game was able to have like 2 polarizing examples of that in less than 2 years. Yeah, Farina was released in 4.1, and then Genshin ruined their game's balance in 5.3. It was like 1.3 years.
Aside from aesthetics, a game might absolutely try to sell a character by making their damage numbers bigger. That might work out in the short term, but there are long-term ramifications for this.
You guys remember what I just said, right? Y'all remember what I just said, right? I surely I don't need to repeat myself over here.
If everyone is godlike, then no one is. A character can only be considered powerful when compared to something not so powerful. Feature creep can actually be even more insidious than power creep. As the game expands and releases more modes and content, there's going to be more menus to go through, more materials to collect, and currencies to keep track of. As a longtime player, you would have been able to adapt to the new changes bit by bit. However, a newcomer is suddenly hit with all these things at once, which may cause some confusion on how to navigate the game.
I think being a, new player to Genshin Impact probably is enough to give you a, mental disorder at this point. With all the shit that's in there, yes, it could be, a lot of really good stuff if that's what you're into, but it can be very, very, very disorienting as well.
Just compare the complexity of character kits from ones that were released at launch and those a few years later.
Oh, just look at a Honkai Star Rail kit, right? Isn't like the prototypical Honkai Star Rail kit was like, my first attack deals single target damage. My second attack deals AoE damage. And then my ultimate deals AoE damage. And then now you have a PhD dissertation and summons and shit. And now you have a dragon that has 2 different forms of attacks. One with a claw and one with its breath. Also, the dragon actually heals you. And when the dragon dies, it actually heals the entire team. Oh, and also the character has a kit too. I was just talking about the dragon's kit. Oh, and there's also a global passive that revives everybody on the server. Yeah, not just on the current team that you're using, the other team as well.
Your tolerance of power creep and feature creep will differ person to person. However, I don't really have a problem with these, as these are natural consequences of the game showing its age. It's unavoidable, and at times even unintentional by the developers.
I don't think Honkai Star Rail was the best game to show for talking about unavoidable and unintentional. I would not have used Honkai Star Rail B-Rail for that one.
I'm gonna throw this one in the mild category, and because I kind of want to talk about it. Paid cosmetics. The gaming industry has more or less accepted and normalized paid cosmetics in-game. Some of these can cost $20, and that's just kind of the reality of things now. I don't have a problem with these, regardless of how much it's priced. The thing about cosmetics is that its pricing is highly subjective. How much do you think a skin like this is worth? Sellers want to sell it at the highest they can sell it for, and buyers want to buy it for the lowest price they can buy it for. There's the age-old argument that cosmetics isn't gameplay, except what if you literally play the game in order to look the coolest? The one thing about paid cosmetics is that it has to be more desirable than the base version, meaning that there's now an incentive to purposely design the base version of something in an inferior way and sell the cosmetics as extra. It just falls on you whether you're okay with paying the money to buy the cosmetics.
I think that there's a bit, I don't really know about the whole, like, base version is intentionally made to look bad, and then the cosmetics are ones that look a lot better. I would dare say the only game that really fits that bill for me, where the base version looks a little off, and then the skin looks better, is actually maybe GFL 2. Yeah, I think GFL 2 is the main one for that one, because there are some base outfits in that game that are just like, wait, this isn't what was advertised. Wait, this isn't what was advertised. And then you look at the skins, and then you're like, oh, that's where it is. That would be the main one. That would be the only one that I feel like really fits the bill. But in pretty much, like, I would say all of, like, the big 4 games, the base, a lot of people could say the base skin is, like, comparable, right? I like regular Jinsei. Honestly, regular Jinsei might be better than Spirit Blossom Jinsei, if I'm frankly being honest. Her hair looked like pastries in the second skin. Maybe I don't like that.
Now we move on to the risky tier. This tier lies in all the tactics that fit my very definition of predatory. Let me start by ripping off a band-aid. Any gacha system, regardless of how it's implemented, is predatory. There is no wiggle room for me on the subject. If you can pay real money to obtain more gacha currency, it fits here.
I think you could just say any microtransaction is predatory from that angle, right? Just think about games like Warframe, where there's no gacha, but you can pay like $50 and just like get the character and stuff immediately. You don't have to grind or wait or do any of that. Isn't that kind of just like somebody not wanting to do exploration in a gacha game, and so they pay money to get the primo gems instead, and so they just pull when... So this is the thing, right? You can guarantee a character. I think a lot of people seem to really not get this link between microtransactions that let you just purchase something you have to grind for. You pay to not grind. Guys, what do you grind in gacha games? Pulls. So you're paying primo gems, or you're paying real life money to get pulls, so you don't have to grind for them. And then you go ahead and then you take what you don't want to grind for and then use it to get the stuff that you want with the pulls. Sometimes there isn't anything to grind anymore. Well, I guess that's the thing, right? There's a lot of similar systems in other games, especially ones that don't have gacha, but maybe have, like, limits. Let's just say, hypothetically, right? Duet Night Abyss releases, and there's a character that comes out, but you require 60 shards, right, to unlock the character. But you can only grind 5 shards a day from the stages. And so, you would still have to wait 12 days, right, of grinding daily to unlock the character, or you could just pay $50-$100 and just get the character immediately. That is an alternative system that probably is actually what they're going to do. I actually don't know if that's what it is, but it's going to be a similar level of frustration on the player's end, because you're not going to be able to get what you want. Now, it's still going to be time-gated, just like how pulls are time-gated by a new version coming out. Because yes, the pulls are limited, but they also refresh when the new version comes out. So it's like, I do feel like a lot of people are just like, I love games with microtransactions that let me skip the grind, but I hate the gacha system. When they're a lot more similar than you think.
I don't care how generous its pull income is. I don't care if it has a separate weapon banner or has incredibly high drop rates. By nature, there's no conceivable way I can agree that a gacha system is not predatory. But let's entertain some edge cases. One of my most beloved gacha games of all time is Limbus Company. I put in a lot of hours into it and I like it a lot. This game has the dispense mechanic, where after the most recent character has been on a rate-up banner, then you can spend...
Nah, that's wrong, especially looking at Warframe. Okay. So, let me illustrate to you the Warframe system. In Warframe, to unlock the new Prime Warframe, this is what I need to do. I need to go in. I need to grind specific relics to get a 10% chance of the prime part dropping, I then need to go ahead and then proceed to do and crack open like 4 or 5 different relics to be able to assemble all the pieces. Each part has a 10% chance of dropping, and then I get the relics from grinding other stages, and those randomly drop. If you are not paying money in Warframe to like get the parts off the marketplace, it takes you literally like a long fucking time to get all the parts. It takes an incredibly long fucking time in Warframe unless you're spending platinum. And if you're at the point where you're saying, oh, just utilize the trading system and then, what's it called? Then, okay, then you're spending the equivalent of money. And so, if you want in Warframe to get these things without actually spending money, well, great news. You can maybe go ahead, start grinding some relics yourself, start selling the parts for platinum. Great, now you're spending time in a fucking marketplace going around, want to sell Nyx Prime chassis. You're gonna spend half your time fucking either in a grinding stage, in a relic stage, or advertising your parts to go sell them to other people. That's a lot of work. That is a lot of bandwidth that you're spending to get all this stuff for free. I hope you guys understand that. That's a lot of work that goes into unlocking a Prime Warframe. But you want to know what I do instead? I just buy some platinum and then just go on the marketplace, go look up people that are like selling the new Prime parts. And so I just go pay to win in Warframe because I don't want to deal with the grind that's in there to get the parts.
Farmable shards to just get them from the menu, allowing you to bypass the gacha entirely. You get the shards by doing daily missions and grinding the roguelike mode. You'll still need 400 of it, and buying the premium battle pass does accelerate the rate that you get it. But still, allowing players to do this is pretty insane. Does that mean that Limbus Company's gacha system is not predatory? No, I disagree. This is a very slippery slope to go down. You know,
but won't it cause burnout? Yeah, that's why I don't play Warframe anymore. Because it was the grind, even when I was paying to win, was too long. Yeah, I was paying to skip the grind, and the grind was too much.
You know the saying, you give an inch, they take a mile? Let's assume that the majority of players agree that the game is not predatory because of this feature. What if a new developer sees this and thinks, if the players don't think it's predatory, then maybe we can do something similar. However, one change they made in their game is that instead of the 400 shards to get the character, it's now 800. Would you still think that's okay? Now, what if a third company takes a look, does the same in their game, but the shard requirement is now 1200? Well, people argue that as long as you can farm it for the shards to bypass the gacha, it's not predatory. So,
and this is the thing that I feel like a lot of people don't really firmly understand. If it's a 1200, you're either gonna pay money or quit the game, because nobody wants to play a game at this day and age like it's a second fucking job on like this like date. Nobody wants to have the time commitment of an MMORPG with like the playtime of a gacha. And so there needs to be a good balance that's struck, because a lot of these games end up being way too goddamn grindy for their own good. And it ends up with some of like the worst player retention ever, because people are just like, what am I doing with my life at a certain point? And so that's why when it comes to a game like Duet Night Abyss, I hope they got some really good stuff planned.
What's the problem? As you can see, as soon as you start entertaining the idea that gacha is not predatory, it opens up a lot of room for developers to get sneaky and try skirting around the definition. And that's why I can't be budged on the subject. I will continue to enjoy Limbus Company, however, at its core, it's classified as a gacha game, and that makes it predatory. The next one is straightforward. I call it the sunk cost offer. You may have noticed that in pretty much every mobile game, there is an extremely high value pack you can buy for as little as $1 for new players. You might think, well, it's just a harmless offer for some ice breaking. It's a good gesture for new players to get a head start. I'd be dumb to turn it down. I mean, it looks so much better in comparison to the other purchases. Now, this may seem harmless on the surface, but there's a very specific reason why it's there.
Let's hear it.
Directly tied to the idea of sunk cost fallacy, this is meant to exploit the human cognitive bias of loss aversion. Studies have found that players who spend money, even if it's little as $1, are more likely to make another purchase in the future. If you spend any money, you're now invested. I already spent $1, why not $5 more?
I don't view an intro package as really... I find it odd that he put an intro package on here. Because it's like it's not like the devs are like forcing me to buy more. It's not like somebody's like you know, controlling me to go buy more. It's just I'm making the conscious decision to do it. And so it's not there, nobody's getting forced to do anything over here. And a mere like intro package that plants the seed of like the sunk cost fallacy that the player themselves decides to grow and let flourish. I'm not really gonna like blame the devs or anything at that point. This is like calling an attractive character design predatory. Psychologically, players are going to be more interested in pulling this character because they're hot as shit. That's kind of predatory once you think about it. They're like, do you guys get what I'm saying over here? That's like calling Yuno predatory because because she features feet and people like feet. That's like calling Lauma predatory because she got birthing hips, right? It's shit like that. Like, wait a second. A $1 package that's high value? I'm not going to call that in, like, the middle, like, genuinely predatory category, because they're not forcing you to do anything. It's not like a design in the game that, like, is forcing you to go one way or the other. The players consciously decide to do, like, whatever they want after that first purchase. So, that's my take. That's my take on it.
$5 more. If I stop now, that'll be a waste of the $1 I spent. I played a lot of gacha games where I did buy the $1 pack, and then after stopped playing in a week. I basically thought of the situation like this. I went into the store, browsed around, bought a pack of gum for $1, and now I'm walking back out.
I mean, if he's describing it this way, how is it predatory?
You can walk out at any time if you think the game is not worth playing. As long as you understand why the sunk cost offer is there, you'll be able to avoid the psychological trap. You may have also noticed that a lot of
I think he's really playing a lot into the whole sunk cost fallacy thing. Then I'll just, yeah, hey, fuck it. I'll call designs that don't look ugly as shit. Hey, predatory as well. How dare they utilize the human's natural attraction to stuff that doesn't look like trash? How dare these devs go ahead and psychologically manipulate their players by making the characters look so fucking good? They're really influencing them a lot over here.
Games have a free daily or weekly pack sitting in the cash shop for you to...
You want to know an example of a game that's not predatory at all? I'll show you guys an example of a game that is not predatory at all. This ain't predatory at all. Nobody's pulling this shit. Ain't nobody pulling this fucking thing. Hell yeah, brother. This is the opposite of predatory. We're saving money right now, brother.
Collect, luring you in with that delicious red dot. The reason why games do this is to increase your exposure to the cash shop. It's natural to have the mindset that since you're in an environment where you're expected to buy something, then you have a higher chance of buying something. This ties in with the mere exposure effect in psychology. By simply increasing one's exposure to something, it increases their preference for it. The free pack is meant to make you feel more familiar with the UI and layout of the cash shop. In certain games, you even have to scroll down the menu to see the free pack past all the other paid offers.
I can't really call this predatory because we're talking about free-to-play games over here. Brother, they gotta make money somehow. I ain't gonna fault the devs over here and call them Satan because they're advertising the only monetization that they have in their game. The only monetization that they have in their game. And so it's kind of just like, wait, am I gonna fault them too much for advertising the only way that they can make money in the game? I personally wouldn't.
And I assure you, this is also intentional. In terms of predatory practices, I think this one falls on the less egregious side. Besides, you can even make the argument that it's good that these packs are there. After all, you're still getting some bonus goodies every day.
Okay, nice.
I mean, economically speaking, you absolutely should take the free pack. There's no reason not to. Me though, I just take my freebies and get out of there in 5 seconds. Another case where as long as you know why it's there, you'll be able to understand things better. This is a pretty big one. Every gacha game these days has their own premium proprietary currency that you collect in order to pull more on the gacha. However, there's no way to directly buy more pulls with real money. Instead, you have to buy the currency first, then convert that into pulls. Bonus points if the currency converts the gacha tokens at an uneven ratio. The effects of this is quite obvious. The proprietary currency is meant to obfuscate the actual cost of in-game items. It's an extra step, more mental gymnastics to figure out if buying something is worth it.
I'm personally of the point of view that, like, the more currencies the game has, the bigger of a disaster it's probably going to become. When you're at the point where you're, like, juggling, like, 17 different fucking currencies, and, like, they all are used on, like, a different type of banner, and it's, like, super confusing, and, like, sometimes you feel like you have enough currency, and then you actually don't, and you need to go, like, top up for, like, $1, it is disorienting, to say the least. I don't like having to keep track of all these different things. Not because I'm dumb, but because I just look at it and I'm just like, why is this shit even here? And it's a constant question. Why is this shit even here other than to, like, intentionally confuse me?
In fact, the FTC recently cracked down on Genshin's practices for this exact reason.
And the thing is, I didn't even think Genshin's was that bad. Genshin actually had one of the, in my opinion, better premium currency situations, because it's just like there's only one fucking thing.
It reveals the ugly truth that when you see the result of this practice being stripped away, how likely would you spend for a temple when you can see that pressing the button costs $20? Proprietary currency serves one other purpose. In some games' cash shops, you may have seen something like this, where the game claims to be running a big sale on select items, but
Genshin's just expensive. But there's other games where it's like, bro, I already see like 4 different resources in here. One of them's a flower, the other one's a fucking gold, one of them's a fucking purple dodecahedron, and then like a fucking diamond that's blue. What the fuck?
But in reality, it is the actual price just having a fake markup. Having fake discounts with non-existent original prices like this is actually illegal in a lot of countries, in order to protect consumers from deceptive practices. However, if you switch that real dollar amount to the proprietary currency, that becomes a loophole in these regulations.
Bro, you got diamonds, then you got a fucking spoon in amber, and then, oh, I guess that was, are those not the same thing? What the hell?
The developers can simply say, look, it's priced in in-game currency, not in real-life dollars, which is exactly something Infinity Nikki has done in a past update. This next topic has some slight ties to proprietary currency, but it puts its own spin on it. Why is it that the amount of gacha currency needed to pull once is a weird amount that's always slightly uneven? Genshin's 160, Arknight's 600, Reverse 1999 with 180, Mekarashi with 88, or Honkai Impact with 280. I assure you, these are not selected at random. What abusive pricing does is that it's again meant to throw off your calculations and how much you need to budget in order to plan your pulls. Let's say that every gacha game came to an agreement and unanimously decided to switch the number of currency needed per pull to 100, a nice, even number. Now, if I ask you, quick, how many Primo Gens do you need for 9 pulls? Easy, 900. What about 26? 2,600. 60 pulls? 6,000.
I mean, I do kind of view this as like, it's very predatory for people who are really bad at math. And this is genuinely my take. And I assure you, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to say anything at all. I'm merely talking about the societal culture over in East Asia. So, in East Asia, they study like a lot. School is like super competitive and stuff over there. And so, like, a lot of them are really good at math. And so, my take actually is that I would expect on average that, like, you take like the average 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old from, like, China, JP, Korea. And I think that they'll typically be a lot better at math than maybe somebody from, like, a region in global. That would be my take. That would be my immediate assumption. I don't know if it's true or not. And so, maybe it's like a bigger concern over in like JP. Maybe it's like a big, or sorry, not in JP, in like other regions. But like, yeah, I feel like the mental math required in this situation is like kind of, I would expect it's light work. I would expect it's light work for CN. Light work for KR, light work for JP.
But if we were to change it back to 160, things are suddenly not so simple. Now, you can still pull up a calculator and get the answers that way, but this pricing scheme serves as an artificial barrier to make you go through one...
Wait, what's this devastating calculation? 160 times 26? That's what I mean, right? He was like, bro, it's out. He's like, not so simple, is it? And it's like a math equation from 4th grade.
One more mental obstacle to get the results you want. Abusive pricing can also extend to the aforementioned...
Like, you guys get what I'm saying now, right? You guys get what I'm saying now, right? That was a 3rd grade math equation.
Proprietary currency. Let's travel back to 2023, back when I still played Genshin. Say that I wanted to buy the skin for Ayaka. When discounted, this went on sale for 1,350 Genesis crystals. I want to ask, how much should a player expect to pay to buy the skin in real-life dollars? Well, taking a glance at the top-up shop, you'll notice that there's no one combination of packs that perfectly matches the amount needed. It's always a bit over or not enough. Besides, what if a player didn't have the first top-up bonus? What if a player already bought a couple rounds of the monthly pass and already has some crystals saved up?
What you do is you just buy whatever pass is the closest, or you just buy a bunch of monthly passes. Boom, that's what I did for the skins in Wuthering Waves. I just bought like 40 monthly passes.
Notice just how hard it is to pinpoint how much a player is expected to pay, as their situation depends on certain other factors. Even after you bought the skin, you're gonna have some crystals left over in your inventory. While you can convert it to primos at a 1-to-1 ratio, you can't convert it back. So if you're someone that has some idea of long-term planning, then you likely just keep your remaining Genesis crystals there in case you need it in the future. So you just leave it there in weird unspendable amounts. When the time comes when you do need to buy more, then that messes with the total amount needed all over again. I want to finish off the risky tier with a short story. A while back, I was looking to buy a new pair of sneakers. This led me down to a rabbit.
What the fuck? I feel like I need to rewind.
I want to finish off the risky tier with a short story. A while back, I was looking to buy a new pair of sneakers. This led me down to a rabbit hole looking at lots of brands and reviews. And eventually, out of curiosity, I looked up the high-end sneaker lineups like the Travis Scott Air Jordans. I was shocked just how much a pair cost. I thought, who in their right mind would spend thousands of dollars on a pair of sneakers? What a waste of money. Turns out, if a sneaker collecting enthusiast saw it, they would go, well, yeah, you want the high-end sneakers with memorabilia sentiments or high performance, you gotta pay up. This is just normal for a sneaker of this caliber. When I started playing gacha games in a very similar fashion, I was...
Sneakerheads have always been a fascinating group of hobbyists for me. Because when people go outside, oftentimes the dirtiest place is the ground. And so I've always thought it was weird to spend so much money on stuff that's like designed to get dirty. That's just me though.
Shocked by how much getting a single rare character would cost if you purely spend money on the top-up packs. Turns out, years later, I became accustomed to it. It's now a normal expectation that if you buy the top-up packs in a gacha game to pull for a new character, you should be expected to spend upwards of $100 or $200.
Oh, they don't use those sneakers though? Do I need to say anything more in response to that statement?
Someone unfamiliar with gacha games might argue the same thing I did when I looked up sneakers. Who in their right mind would spend hundreds of dollars for a virtual character in a video game? What a waste of money. In which someone like me would respond, yeah, it's been like this since the birth of gacha games all the way back in the mid-2010s. I guess it does seem kinda unreasonable, except this is just how things are. This is completely normal. It's also the result of price gouging that the lower price packs look better in comparison. I think most rational players would see buying the top-up packs as the very last resort after they've exhausted all other options.
So this is my take. Gacha characters have never been worth $300, $400. Because if they actually were, then you could say, hey guys, Wuthering Waves, this update has 100 pulls. The devs are giving us like $300. They're not. And so if characters are actually what they cost to just get the pulls from the top up, or get the pulls from topping up and then spending it on the banner, then these devs are effectively giving you hundreds of dollars a patch. But nobody's saying that. And this is the reality, right? You can, as somebody who's just going in, doing all the free-to-play rewards and stuff, right? You can guarantee a character typically every 2 patches. Maybe 2 characters if you get lucky on the 50-50, right? And the thing is, you're paying your money. You're paying that amount of dollars so that you can get the character now. Because guess what, guys? When a character runs and you don't get them on the banner, they're pretty much guaranteed to run within 4 updates. And so, you are easily able to save enough for their rerun if you miss them on their debut banner. But you're then deciding to, okay, I'm going to go spend that on something else. I'm going to go spend that elsewhere. Or I'm not going to save because there's something else that I wanted instead. And that's what you're spending money on. It's the ability to get everything that you wanted instead of just part of what you wanted. And that's where they get you, right? Because you want it now. You want Cartithia in 2.4. You don't want Cartithia in 2.8. I assume Cartithia is going to rerun in 2.8. You wanted Lupa in 2.4. You didn't get her, but you saved, and now you can get her in version 2.7, 3 patches later. Oh, but did you not save, and then you pulled an Augusta or a Yuno instead? Chances are you might not be able to pull your Lupa. And so, did Lupa cost $300, or did you pay $300 to get Lupa because, well, you wanted somebody else more? That's the reality of the situation, ladies and gentlemen.
There was a $45 pack in Girls Frontline 2 that let you select from a pool of limited dolls and their signature weapon. That's an insane offer. You'd be going upwards of $200 to $300 if you whale for them instead. What about this $30 pack in Reverse 1999? Now, let me be clear about something. I don't have a problem with whaling in a video game.
Once again, by that same logic, right?
The Genshin devs are actually giving us $120 this patch because they gave out 60 pulls. And when I spend $100, I only get 40 pulls. So actually, it's like $150 that they're giving us, guys. How generous every patch.
However, a fine line that I draw is that you must be aware of how much you're spending at all times. The moment you lose track how much you spend is when you start blurring the lines between a fair purchase and gambling. So now we end up in the deep end. There are only 2 entries in this category, but they're quite broad subjects.
Oh boy. The deep end category. Let's hear it.
So we'll start with FOMO, or fear of missing out. I absolutely despise FOMO elements in video games, except FOMO can take form in so many ways that you kind of get lost. The basic concept is that the game is creating artificial scarcity by making certain items or content time-limited with no predictable period where they'll come back, if at all. Here are the sources that I consider to be the main aspects of FOMO and how they hurt my experience with a gacha game. The first is flash sales. These pop-ups will lure you with a limited time deal that usually expires.
Oh, these are super gay. I don't like these. These are terrible. Yeah, this shit over here where it's like,
You've hit level 15. You've hit level 15. You got 5 minutes to purchase this new special level 15 pack. That's 900%.
that's how I know the game is kind of a little sus.
Really fast. You better get it now, or it might disappear forever. This plays on a fake sense of urgency to nudge you to make a purchase.
I 100% agree with his take over here. If this is like what he's talking about by FOMO, this is not good.
Remember when I talked about daily logins and battle passes that by themselves I don't have a problem with? Well, if we were to include a limited time item in said login or battle passes, then that does become an issue for me. Now, limited items can come in a variety of ways, such as a player profile border, an avatar, a player skin, or a special plaque to display on your profile. The question becomes, how much do you care about this thing? If you don't care about cosmetic items and player profile add-ons, then this sort of thing won't faze you. However, if you can't get over just how these items may never be available again in the future, that might just cause you to pay extra attention to your logins or feel obligated to participate in these events.
Spending events.
Let's talk about limited time gacha characters next. It's a natural assumption that once a limited character banner ends, then you have to wait for an indefinite amount of time before you will have the opportunity to get them again. How many limited characters and how often they release is completely up to the discretion of the developer.
I think Wuthering Waves, I know that's the example that he showed. It probably got one of the best rerun systems in the genre. I'm not gonna lie. I think the longest we've gone a character without rerunning is 4 patches. And if Cartithia isn't in 2.8, it's going to be 5 patches. But other than that, every character has reran within 3 versions of their release. I think that's very fair. Like I said before, it's about 2 versions for a free-to-play player to guarantee a 5-star. This means that if every character is rerunning within 3 versions, you can literally guarantee whoever you want. And if you're not guaranteeing somebody, you're either not playing the game or you're choosing to prioritize somebody else. And so there's fair trade-offs there when it comes to their banner cycles. It ain't some shit like Gensino Impact. Oh, y'all ready for this one? I'll show you some bullshit right here. I hope y'all ready for this one.
Leaves in the wind.
2021. 06, the first Kazuha banner. Let's check out the second Kazuha banner. July 2022, more than a year later. The third Kazuha banner. 11 months later. The fourth Kazuha banner. 8 months later. And then they actually did a fast rerun over here because they already power crept the fuck out of him by releasing Jalonin. So they realized they didn't have to lock him behind they didn't have to lock him in the BDSM chamber for 9 months of the year anymore. Sorry, 12 months of the year anymore. So yeah, after they release the character that power crept him, they start rerunning him more. Yeah, that's the Genshin banner schedule. So yeah, if you don't pull him now, see ya in a year, bucko. This is criminal once you think about it. They released one of the most broken characters in the game. Literally, he's one of the strongest ones since release. And then they intentionally decide to delay his banner for an entire year so that when he is running, you gotta pull him now. Hey, you gotta spend now. I know you wanted maybe Raiden Shogun or whoever. I know you wanted that other 5-star, but if you don't pull Kazuha now and you don't spend what you've been saving on the other units, you're gonna have to wait another full fucking year for him. And that's why Wuwa's banner schedule being the way that it is so positive. Because there's not this pressure of, oh, I just won't be able to pull this fucking character for a whole goddamn year if I don't shell out all my savings now. And the only time they let loose on the gas pedal is after they power crept Kazuha. That is FOMO at its peak for sure.
I will say, there are games where limited characters become part of the standard pool after a while. So even if they won't be available, you can still possibly get them when a non-raid up spooks you. There's also the matter of limited time events. Given that gacha games put a big emphasis on world building, considering that it's trying to sell its characters to you, a lot of the story content introduced in events can contribute to that.
I think it's okay to have limited time rewards for an event as long as the event itself is permanent.
What makes absolutely no sense to me is making said story content only viewable during their event period, especially when the story can expand on the game's lore or explain an important subplot.
Genshin is terrible for this. I don't know why these developers have a fetish for locking actual important parts of the story to, like, these limited time events, when they could just be permanent in the game, and they could maybe just spend less time, like... I'm just trying to think about all the useless. Just delete the Soretta teapot. You know that shit is taking up so much storage that you could be spending on so many other things.
It's like gatekeeping players from enjoying the full extent of the world building. See,
actually, not Soretta teapot. Delete invocation TCG.
It's rather counterintuitive. FOMO elements greatly impact my enjoyment of a game, and I tend to rate highly of games that don't have as many tactics related to it. For example, one of my favorite games I'm playing right now is Reverse 1999. The majority of the newly released characters will become part of the standard pool after 3 patches, and when older events get archived, you can just view it at any time. Of course, this is not the only gacha game that does this, and I do appreciate it when there's pushback against this kind of practice.
I hope people don't read too much into the whole standard 5-star limited characters eventually go to the standard pool. I think that's one of actually the worst systems that you can have. Do you want to know why? Because now the developers have a justification for the most disgusting power creep that will ever happen, ever. Because they'll just say, the power creep doesn't really matter because, well, every character's in the standard pool anyways, and so you can just get dupes of them. It's not a big deal. So, like, it's, like, okay if everyone gets power crept because everyone's going to standard. And so it ends up just becoming, you will never actually use older units. You'll only use the newer ones because now there's a justification for power creep. And, well, that's just how it goes. And if you want an example of why I'm saying it's bad, look at Punishing Grey Raven. 90% of that roster is useless.
As you can see, creating artificial scarcity can be extremely beneficial to retention and monetization. FOMO is unfortunately one of the things that the developer has full control over. They get to choose what and when players get to access certain content, and that's why it's one of my most disliked predatory practices. Now, aside from FOMO, there's one more topic I want to talk about. Something so insidious that it overshadows every other subject on this list.
I already know he's going to talk about it. It's the 50-50. I have some thoughts on the 50-50.
One more trick to ensnare you into keeping you playing and spending money on the game. One tactic that's much more covert and impactful, as it permeates every aspect of your moment playing a game. Surprisingly enough, the game company is typically not the one that reinforces this. I'm talking about tribalism.
Whoa! Whoa, he didn't have the 50-50 on here? I actually thought he was going to put the 50-50. It's not mentioned anywhere in the video.
When you play a game for a very long time, you become accustomed to it. It becomes part of your personality. In a way, it becomes an integral portion to your life that you would defend at all costs. You can't imagine living your life without doing your dailies or interacting with the community. And when there's outside forces disturbing that peace, it makes you just want to lash out, put the opposition in their place, and go back to the safety of your sanctuary that is your game. One of the biggest challenges I face when I review gacha games is coming up—
I'm so disappointed there's no— I thought bro was about to have like a pop-off about the 50-50. I feel like I just got edged.
With actual valid critiques. The problem with critiquing a game, especially one that's well-known and has a long following behind it, is that even when you're saying things that has validity to it, there will be a vocal crowd that will deny everything negative you say. It doesn't matter that you're right, it's that they don't want you to be right. Let's say you've played a single gacha game for years already. When you see someone reviewing the game, a thought that might come up is, what gives you the right to critique my game?
This sounds a little personal.
There's the age-old argument in the MMO community that you need to spend 100 hours on a game before your opinion is considered valid. And you can imagine with the sheer number of competition in the gacha market right now, all with their dedicated and loyal fans, we can imagine something similar taking place. This happens more often with older gachas as they have built up a more dedicated and loyal fanbase that's more or less made the game part of their personality. Gacha tribalism is alive and real. This is my genuine advice to you. Your relationship with gaming companies is purely transactional. You can enjoy the game. You can spend money on it. You can buy their merch. You can go to their live events. Look, I got Snowbreak merch sitting on my desk right now. I don't have a problem when people enjoy a game as a hobby. The issue arises if you see the game or the company is anything more than that. Then I find that extremely problematic. Online personalities can exacerbate this mindset even further. When a game or community gets big enough, online moderators and content creators have a vested interest in keeping their status of authority. You may notice that once in a while, a post or two that criticizes the game goes missing or gets censored, or how certain content creators and influencers tend to consistently push a certain narrative really hard. Gacha X's devs really care about you, unlike the other developers. Gacha X is way better than Gacha Y. You become so sensitive to criticism that it's like if someone online made a simple comment, "I think Gacha Y is really good."
Are we still talking about monetization? This is like a whole separate ass video.
Your immediate reaction is, "Oh, so you hate Gacha X?" Covering drama and rage bait content is extremely easy, and it often leads to a lot of views. I know this, and even this video is somewhat framed as so. However, when your exposure to the gacha space is nothing but drumming up reasons to be outraged, you have to understand how it affects you psychologically. If you really look deep and boil everything down, let's see which parties inducing gacha tribalism really benefits. The development company, moderators, and content creators, not the players. Online moderators will keep critiques of their game to a controlled amount to maintain their authoritative image. Content creators keep pushing their one-sided narrative as it drives easy views with rage bait and drama content. The company has no reason to interfere as it doesn't conflict with their interests. What better way to shield yourself from criticism than your own fans? What better way to feed into the echo chamber of toxic positivity than to keep unsuspecting fans in a constant state of hate and vitriol?
I guess it's just really confusing what the placement of this is, I guess in context of the video. Which is, I guess, personally fine, right? And I think one of the big focuses that you need to think about is that, A, there's not really any specificity in here. And the main specificity that he definitely had was talking about some of the older gacha game communities, right? So I tried to make sure to listen to most of it before formulating a take, if there is a take to have. Because I don't necessarily think this is my viewpoint on this. I think this is definitely something that happens a lot when it comes to a game that is currently going downhill, right? That is something that definitely happens a lot when a game is going downhill, where you're at the point where you can talk about some of the critiques, you do talk about them, and then you end up getting, silenced out, ostracized, all of that, right? I would dare say that it happens a lot more the worse that the game actually is. And I've had personal experiences with this myself, right? You've got Zenless Zone Zero, where I've been calling it from day one of version 2.0, calling it since the anniversary announcement. The game's story's bad, right? The anniversary sucks. The game's not headed down a good path. And that was me just spitting facts about what I thought, and clearly what many other thought about the updates as well. But I went ahead, right? I got shouted out. I had like a 30% like ratio on the video, things like that. And the reality is these critical pieces are made by content creators, because I know that's a party that's been called out a lot here as well. These critical pieces are made so that people know how well their money is being spent. And so this whole piece over here, where he says,
the development company, moderators, and content creators, not the players.
How does it not help the players for them to know that their money isn't being spent well? How does it not help the players to know that Genshin Impact makes billions of dollars, but then proceeds to pump out cutscenes that literally look like they're from a PS1 game? That's telling you, these devs, when they get money, when they monetize you, they don't put it back into the game. And so you are paying for a subpar product that's going to decrease in quality over time instead of improving quality over time, unlike other titles. And so this is essentially, I'm not really sure. Again, there's clearly a hard stance taken here by Saeki of just like, gacha tribalism is awful for the players and it's only benefiting these greedy and stupid individuals. Comparisons so that a consumer knows what product is better. How does that not benefit the player? For players to get educated on what type of game, what kind of system, what kind of whatever is better. And at that point, I think that this is where this argument in the video kind of just falls flat on its face. Because if you're helping consumers get educated, how is that not helping them? And that's basically the take that Sayeki's having. It's that any gacha tribalism, any comparison of whatever, any comparison between X gacha and Y gacha doesn't help the players, when in reality, would Genshin Impact have any of its quality of life that it added? Would Genshin Impact have the free 5-star, the free standard 5-star with Natlan, if Wuthering Waves didn't come out and comparisons weren't made? When the only time Genshin, in its 4-year history at that point, had ever done a free 5-star was right after Wuwa's anniversary, or right after Wuwa's release. Would Honkai Star Rail have added their skip button if Wuthering Waves didn't have one? And then players were constantly making fun of HSR for not having a skip button. And if you have answers to those questions, maybe you can give me the Hoyo's CEO's phone number as well, because clearly you know a lot more than everybody else if you're able to make broad sweeping conclusions like this. So I think that this section is honestly a kind of horrific misplay from Sayeki. It does make him appear overly sensitive considering the last experience that he had regarding his Wuthering Waves critique. I'm just going to be honest, it's kind of disappointing to see firsthand. Because let's just be real here. His video regarding the Wuthering Waves story wasn't that good. And because it wasn't that good, and he got a lot of very fair critiques on it, I think he's just really been turned off by this idea that, like, players are able to defend bad critiques of their game. And so, I think this is the thing, right? I really think he's letting his personal feelings really bleed way too much into the content over here. I'm not going to dig into it too much, but he does sound very salty. And I do think that he needs to, in all respects, this statement over here is really what makes it seem like really personal to me. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but to go ahead and say that gacha tribalism comparison between games doesn't benefit players at all, and then it's only really, you know, helping out these external parties, I just think it's a very loaded statement, and I have to, you know, I'm just theory crafting reasons for why he could be making it. But yeah, I just think it's a lot.
Pushing their one-sided narrative as it drives easy views with rage bait and drama content. The company has no reason to interfere as it doesn't conflict with their interests. What better way to shield yourself from criticism than your own fans? What better way to feed into the echo chamber of toxic positivity than to keep unsuspecting fans in a constant state of hate and vitriol? To get easy views and reinforce blind loyalty towards them and the game. As a player feeding into this tribalistic behavior, your emotional vulnerabilities are being exploited for their personal gain.
Is this statement enough for you guys, anybody that wasn't agreeing with me before, to now agree with me? So, like I said, or like I am most of the time, even if I make like a theory crafty sort of take, it ends up getting proven right about 30 seconds later, doesn't it? So when I said this sounds personal, was I wrong? I think that this video improves significantly if this section isn't in here. And this is a similar take that I made for his prior video, where he, once again, he critiqued Genshin Impact and Wuthering Waves' story. And then everybody who watched the Genshin Impact part said he was spot on. And then everyone said the Wuwa part was, it has so many logical fallacies and like misinterpretations in it. And we all said it would just be better if this wasn't there. And I got to give the same level of feedback over here. This would be so much better if this wasn't here. I don't know what this part of the video is doing in here other than making him look really, really, really oversensitive.
The only losing side
Rough
here
luck.
is you. I imagine the majority of gacha players are rational and mature people, and that there are many online personalities that are more neutral and more accepting of different ideas. I don't think any game is perfect. Even the best of the best can have critiques you can point out, and even the worst can possibly have redeeming qualities. Of course, I'm fairly certain that I myself may have contributed to some tribalistic sentiments. Believe me, I know I'm not immune to this. As a game company, goodwill is a currency. It's gained when you do good things and spent when you do bad things. You can support and spend money on the game because you like how you're being treated. However, never forget that you are the customer. The moment you start defending the game from all forms of criticism is the moment you lost. And that is why I believe tribalism is the worst product that came out of gacha gaming.
I think it would have been a lot more interesting if he brought up like specific examples if he was going to dive into this subject. But unfortunately, the ending part over here is like so vague, so unspecific. And when you factor in his history, being this vague and unspecific does just make him seem incredibly butthurt. I think that's kind of like the big issue with this part, is that it feels like a gigantic subtweet, and like you subtweet when you're like 15 years old.
And the most damaging trap you can fall into. You are quite literally stopping the developers from making changes that could improve the game and allowing to exploit you even further. When you take a step back and really examine the gacha market, I think there's a reason why this genre of games will always have a degree of stigma that will never go away.
It's such a jarring tangent from the rest of the video.
A lot of the methods used to try to retain and monetize users are implicit and invisible. When you've been playing a number of gacha games, a lot of these tactics may have been normalized, seen as an everyday occurrence. It might be a weird experience when a game doesn't have a stamina system, or a gacha system. Regardless, everyone plays games to have fun. And while
my suggestion is, if you're watching this video, go from the FOMO chapter and then skip right into the closing words.
There's a lot of ways that developers can try and sneak predatory practices in the game. There's
I wish I did that.
Absolutely ways to enjoy it as well. I want to believe that the practices mentioned in this video will take away from what could have been the most ideal experience. And the best gacha games, by my standards, are the ones that take away the least. If you're a well-taught person, you'll probably be able to calculate the max pity total of the gacha currency as the real price tag of gacha characters. You understand that buying expensive skins doesn't affect your social standings or make you superior to other players. How the in-game characters are there as emotional objects for you to feel affectionate to. How this whole gacha tribalism argument is nothing more than a smokescreen to make you feel loyal to your own game and feel outraged towards others. What gacha games ultimately prey on are your emotional and mental needs. They create a fantasy, a world where you can fill the shoes of someone strong and powerful.
I don't know if he's talking about like devs pushing for tribalism. I don't really know. I think the main take is that a lot of people get very upset when somebody says that a game isn't good. A lot of people get very upset when people say a game isn't good. And my take to this has always been, if there's nothing bad in a game, I won't say there's anything bad in a game. But if I'm saying that something is bad in a game, and it's actually bad in the game, what's the problem? Similarly, if you're saying something's good in the game, and it's good, what's the problem? The problem occurs when you say something is bad, when it's actually good, and the problem occurs when you say something is good when it's bad. So people say the ZZZ 2.0, 2.1 story is good. That's bad because the story's dog shit. And similarly, somebody saying that Wuthering Waves has like a super shallow, super surface level story or whatever, right? Whatever critique was like in here. It's been so long ago, it doesn't matter, right? If somebody says a wrong critique about the Woo-Wah story, and then people simply just point out where in the story you're incorrect about because you, again, Psyche mis-summarized basic parts of the plot, and so people asked him if he was spamming the skip button or reading Wikipedia summaries because he was literally mentioning parts of the plot and it was just wrong, and they called it a deep dive critique. It's stuff like that where you're like, is calling that critique off base because the summary of the situation was incorrect? Is that tribalism? The thing is, like I said, his breakdown over here is like so vague and so unspecific, and he's just like creating all these blanket statements about the situation. It just seems really off. Yeah, I don't really know what's like really going on here in the ending section. So yeah, it is what it is, right? And I'm glad we were able to clarify some of the takes going on, and of course, right, get into like some of the history of the stuff. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure bro said some shit about like the Black Shores. I forgot, right. Bro said that Rover needed a reason to save the world and that there wasn't enough of a reason given, and so that's why he thought the story was bad. Hey fellas, is it wrong not to want the entire world to blow up, and so it is what it is. So yeah, I would just say, up until this point, 8, 9, 9.5 out of 10 video. 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10 video. This part over here, probably like a 2 out of 10. End result, 7 out of 10 score. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.